Welcome, movie lovers and theology nerds. This is our summary of the series Breaking Bad. As we went through over the course of this year, we summarized each season as we went, partly to remind viewers what the heck happened each season. If it was a while ago that you watched it, it's easy to get them mixed up and maybe forget some details. But also, these have just been a really fun summary for me to write and for us to kind of explore and to consolidate some of those themes as we went. And so we decided to go back and record one for season 1. And what you'll hear after this is going to be the rest of the summaries for the whole show. So if you want to know what the whole show is about, stay tuned, if you will. So we'll start with Breaking Bad, which is the story of Walter White, a 50-year-old, overqualified and underpaid high school chemistry teacher. Walt foreshadows the arc of this series by telling his class at the beginning of the show that chemistry is the study of change, and that like life, it is about growth, then decay, then transformation.
Walt has a pregnant wife, a son with cerebral palsy, and has just found out he has terminal lung cancer. With no money to his name, he's seeking a way to provide for his family when his brother-in-law Hank, an agent in the Drug Enforcement Administration, takes him on a ride-along as they bust a meth lab.
There, Walt sees his former student, Jesse, and decides to partner with him in the meth business. The two buy an RV and begin cooking meth, but run into trouble with their distributor, Crazy 8. After much debate, Walt and Jesse decide to kill Crazy 8.
Back at home, Walt tells his family about the cancer and eventually begins the very expensive treatment, adding further motivation to his business endeavor. He rejects an offer from his wealthy former business partners to pay for the treatment, opting to make the money himself.
When Jesse can't sell their product fast enough, Walt pushes them into a partnership with a new distributor, an unhinged meth head named Tuco. Walt and Jesse switch to a new recipe that allows them to cook the meth even faster, creating their iconic blue product.
Tuco then shows his true colors by savagely beating his own partner for no evident reason. Season 1 ends with Tuco driving away from Walt and Jesse, who are horrified at who they've just become partners with.
All right, stay tuned for season 2 and all the other ones. After things turn south with Tuco, Walt and Jesse plan to kill him, but they get kidnapped first. Walt's family worriedly searches for him, which leads Hank to Tuco's hideout where he kills Tuco. Walt and Jesse return to Albuquerque to establish their alibis, but Skyler isn't buying Walt.
Hank's heroism leads to a promotion to the DEA big leagues, where he struggles with PTSD over killing Tuco and a cold-blooded attack in Juarez. As Walt and Sky grow more distant, Jesse gets evicted and eventually falls for his new landlady, Jane. He and Walt start cooking again, and Jesse builds a distribution network. Walt pushes Jesse to handle a dealer getting mugged, which gives him a reputation as a real thug. Meanwhile, Walt tells off Gretchen Schwartz, who withdraws her supposed payment for his treatment, and Walt spins this to alleviate his marital tensions, for now, at least.
Then when the dealer gets arrested, Walt and Jesse are slung into the orbit of sleazy criminal lawyer Saul Goodman, who helps them throw off the DEA and joins their criminal enterprise. After they cook an enormous batch and defy death in the desert, Walt goes into remission before greedily pushing Jesse to expand their territory, leading to the murder of one of their dealers. This causes Jesse to start smoking meth again, which pulls his girlfriend, a recovering addict, off the wagon until she introduces him to heroin.
Skyler goes back to work with her old flirtatious boss, Ted Beneke, before giving birth to her daughter. With Saul's help, Walt sells the whole batch of meth to chicken mogul Gus Fring, scoring a huge payday, which he refuses to share with Jesse due to his drug use. Walt Jr. inadvertently helps launder his dad's drug money. Jesse and Jane blackmail Walt to get his share of the money, but she chokes while strung out on heroin as Walt stands idly by and watches her die. Jesse is devastated, returning to drugs and then eventually to rehab. Jane's father spirals into grief until he loses focus at his very high-stakes job as an air traffic controller.
Walt has surgery to remove more of the cancer after accidentally telling Skyler that he has a second cell phone. Once he recovers, she kicks him out of the house and confronts him about all of the lies and where the money's coming from. In the end, Walt's world comes crashing down around him just as bodies start to fall from two colliding commercial airliners.
Season 3 starts with Jesse in therapy, grieving Jane's death, while Walt is reeling from his wife leaving him, not to mention that fateful crash of two airliners resulting in hundreds of deaths. After being pushed out of his house, Walt is trying to reconcile with Skyler, who's figured out that he's in the drug trade and starts having an affair with her boss as a means of revenge. While a new cartel threat makes its way up from the border, Walt keeps refusing an irresistible multi-million-dollar offer from the chicken mogul, Gus Fring.
Meanwhile, Jesse gets clean, buys his old house back, and eventually starts cooking meth again. Walt is livid with Jesse for using his recipe, which Gus uses to manipulate Walt into cooking in a swanky new underground super lab with his new assistant, Gail. This arrangement keeps Walt safe from two axe-wielding killers who are hell-bent on revenge for their cousin, Tuco.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then Hank is invited back to El Paso, but instead throws himself into the hunt for Heisenberg, circling in on that elusive RV, which we know belongs to our protagonist, and he links it to Jesse. Walt and Jesse then barely escape Hank's grasp with some trickery involving his wife, which then causes Hank to beat Jesse senseless. And to keep Jesse from pressing charges and ending Hank's career, Walt arranged for Jesse to replace Gale and makes him a 50-50 partner once again. So problem is the cousins then get Gus's permission to get revenge on Hank, and Hank then instead barely manages to kill them and escape with his life.
That's right. A lot happening. And then Hank as he slowly recovers, the cooks make loads and loads of money working with Gus, but Jesse begins to feel shortchanged and starts skimming meth from the drug dealers in order to sell to recovering addicts of all people. There, he meets and falls for Andrea before finding out that her 11-year-old brother, Tomas, works for two of Gus's dealers selling the infamous blue meth, and that he murdered Combo back in season 2. When Jesse's revenge plans result in Tomas being killed, Walt actually steps in, saving Jesse's life and killing the two dealers responsible. Gus then tries to kill Walt and Jesse, but Walt plans to save his skin by sacrificing Gale, the lab assistant, who was slated to replace him. But as Walt is being marched to his death, he asks Jesse to take down Gale instead. So season 3 ends with Gale pleading for his life while Jesse tearfully pulls the trigger.
All right, season 4 starts with Jesse shooting Gale. See, spoiler right there.
Right there,
Just ruined it.
right there.
Jesse shoots Gale in an effort to save Walt's life. Gus can't kill them, but he uses a box cutter to make it clear that he will do it the first chance that he gets. Jesse then copes with the guilt by committing his first murder. He's committed his first murder, so he turns to his home into an endless party/crack den. Walt copes by buying a .38 snub and trying to get the drop on Gus, who's always watching through his new camera. And Hank, meanwhile, is struggling with his recovery and his relationship with Marie and starts collecting rocks.
Geez, James, they're minerals!
Yeah, whatever. And he eventually finds purpose by investigating Gale's murder, but that leads him dangerously close to Gus and, by extension, Walt.
Gus and Mike get Jesse to snap out of his guilt-ridden stupor by giving him more responsibility and attempting to earn his loyalty. Walt convinces Jesse to help him kill Gus using ricin, which Jesse hides in his lucky cigarette and waits for a chance to slip it to Gus. Skylar buys the car wash to launder money and scripts out a gambling story to feed Hank and Marie. And after hearing Hank praise Gale as a chemistry genius, a prideful Walt drunkenly pushes Hank back on the trail of Heisenberg. This makes Skylar fearful that Walt is in danger, to which he replies, "I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks."
Nice.
Hank recruits Walt to help him investigate Gus, whose tensions are rising within the cartel as they demand that he send them the chef who can cook the blue meth. Gus finally agrees to give them Jesse, but not before Walt and Jesse have a knockdown, drag-out fight over Jesse's apparent shift in loyalty. In Mexico, Jesse proves himself a valuable cook for the cartel just before Gus executes his revenge on the cartel boss that murdered his old partner many years before.
That's right. And upon their return to New Mexico, Gus fires Walt and threatens to murder his family, leading Walt to seek the disappearer that Saul has told him about. In the crawl space, Walt discovers that Skylar gave most of their money to her old boss, Ted Beneke, to keep the IRS off their trail. Unable to help his family escape, Walt then melts down and then enacts a plan to protect his family and to kill Gus. Jesse's girlfriend, Andrea, finds out that her son, Brock, is deathly ill. When Jesse can't find his lucky cigarette, he confronts Walt, thinking he has used it to poison Brock. With a gun to his head, Walt convinces Jesse that Gus did it to manipulate him into killing Walt. The two of them then hatch an explosive plan to take out Gus, which is foiled by Gus's apparent sixth sense. But Walt then recruits Hector Salamanca to help him in his face-off with his old enemy, Gus. And as Gus is about to kill him, Hector rings his iconic bell, setting off the bomb, destroying Gus in a blaze of glory.
Ding!
Yep. Ding, ding, ding.
Jesse and Walt then torch the lab, find out Brock was poisoned by eating the berries of a flower called Lily of the Valley. After Walt tells his wife, "I won," and we celebrate his victory over his greatest enemy, the season ends with a slow zoom on a potted plant in Walt's backyard, and the label reads, Lily of the Valley.
Dun, dun, dun. Season 5 begins in the wake of the killing of Gus Fring. Walt and Jesse partner with Mike to destroy Gus's laptop, which contains security footage of the lab, and they do this using magnets!
That's right. Meanwhile, Hank's investigation of Heisenberg led him to Lydia, who supplied methylamine. That's how you say it, right? Methylamine to Gus, and who approaches Mike about Gus's 11 guys who'd been arrested and could blow everyone else's cover. Mike reluctantly agrees to work with Walt and Jesse in order to make up the money seized by the DEA and to provide hazard pay to keep those 11 guys quiet.
The crew then devises a new plan for cooking meth using tented houses and a pest company as their cover. Skylar, who has been terrified of Walt since she found out what he did, takes a dip in the pool in order to get the kids out of the house and away from Walt.
Yes, and so in order to get more methylamine, the crew pulls off an epic Western-style train heist with the help of Todd, an eager new partner. Everything went smoothly, but when they were spotted by a boy on a dirt bike, Todd acts quickly and shoots him, to the horror of the rest of the crew.
After the killing of young Drew Sharp, Mike and Jesse want to get out of the meth business. After making them say his name, Walt convinces a new crew to distribute the product. Despite his caution, Mike gets busted, loses his money, tries to leave town, but Walt shoots and kills him first.
With Mike then out of the way, he hires Todd's menacing Uncle Jack to coordinate the murder of the 11 guys in prison. Walt starts working with Todd, and the two spend months cooking meth and making fat stacks. Walt makes so much money that Skylar convinces him to get out of the business. And just when everything begins to return to normal, Hank makes a chilling discovery that Heisenberg is in fact his own brother-in-law.
And I'm just going to very briefly interrupt and say, for those of us that watch this live, we had to then wait a full year for the other half of this season.
Oof.
Torment. Anyway, sorry. James, continue.
Yeah, Hank puts the pieces together and confronts Walt, who tells him that his cancer has returned and that Hank should tread lightly.
Jesse is actually racked with guilt over the killing of Drew Sharp and gets on Hank's radar when he gets reckless with the blood money that Walt gave him. As he's about to leave town with Saul's disappearer, he figures out that Walt poisoned Brock and then teams up with Hank to bring him down.
Walt buries his fortune and asks Uncle Jack to kill Jesse. Jesse and Hank trick Walt into confessing to his crimes and leading them to his buried treasure. Then Uncle Jack shows up, takes most of Walt's money, and tragically murders Hank. Walt is devastated and gives them Jesse, but not before telling him that he stood by and watched Jane die.
Walt takes the rest of his money and tries to disappear with his family, but they won't come with him because of Hank. Walt leaves his family behind, fleeing to New Hampshire. Meanwhile, Todd has made Jesse into their meth-cooking slave.
After several months, Walt returns to Albuquerque, where he buys an M60 machine gun and manipulates the Schwartzes into giving his money to Walt Jr., or Flynn. He finally confesses to Skylar that he did all of this for himself, not his family.
That's right. Walt then executes his vengeance on Lydia using the ricin and on Uncle Jack's crew using the machine gun as a rig. Pretty crazy stuff. Walt saves Jesse and frees him from his captivity. The series ends with Jesse driving Todd's El Camino into the night and Walt dying surrounded by his beloved lab equipment.
We hope you enjoyed this snack-sized taste of Popcorn Theology. Check out the full episode using the link in the description. Subscribe on YouTube for more content. Follow and interact on social media to share with others. And remember, you are not a mindless consumer.